All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. Michael, great to have you. Look forward to speaking with you. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's going to be a great discussion today. We're talking a little bit offline, and I think before we, get into some of the topics and hear your W-2 prison break story, maybe give the listeners a little bit about you. You know who you are and what you're doing now, and then we'll kind of get into how you got here.
Yeah, who I am. That's such a large question, but it's all good. So who I am, I I've been investing, buying. I guess we'll talk about real estate first, but I'm a father of two kids. I'm married. Um, both my kids are 12 and 13 years of age, respectively, and we live in Southern Indiana. So we live right across the river from Louisville. I started investing in 2014, so I'm a real estate investor. I buy off market real estate full time. Um, we do a lot of different exits with them, but whether that's flips, wholesale, creative, buy and hold, maybe even a few note and mortgages here or there. So that's what I do. Hang out with the family and buy real estate.
Yeah, and I saw that your pool was open here not too long ago, so you're
Yeah,
definitely
that's
hanging out
right.
with you're hanging out with the family. So we'll definitely let's talk about real estate too, because a lot
Sure.
of a lot of folks who are in real estate are are listening to the show, and you're doing a lot of different things since 2014. There's a lot of different strategies that you have. I'll just ask you, what's your favorite? What's your favorite investing strategy?
The ones with limited to no money out of pocket. That's whatever that looks like, right? Like you know, buying creatively is by far my favorite. It's what has made me the most money. Buying
Nice.
it sub two, owner finance, those are the two ways that are my absolute favorite.
Explain what that is to the listeners, because not everybody knows sub two, and that's a great strategy for sure. So just give us kind of high level as to what that involves.
Yeah, very kind of the basic level is we take ownership of real estate while leaving any liens or encumbrances on the property. So typically, when you buy real estate, any previous liens have to be wiped away so that when you take ownership, those liens won't come back to bite you. And with us, we're buying it and leaving these liens, typically a mortgage, and we're paying that mortgage moving forward. That's the very basic version of what we do.
Right. And why would what are some of the circumstances as to where, because I mean I love the strategy. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to get a bank loan to pay off another bank loan. What are some of the reasons why the sellers that you work with would agree to that type of an arrangement, if you will, for lack of a better phrase?
Yeah. So it really depends on their situation. You know, why do people do anything that they do? That's the real question. And honestly, it really comes down to, do they believe that I'm going to do what I say that I'm going to do? Um, and and if they do, and they're okay with it, then they do it. And typically, it's usually the majority of my sub twos have been from pre foreclosure,
Hmm.
people in pre foreclosure that are have a significant amount of money owed to the bank to bring the mortgage current. They don't have that ability, right? And that's when I can step in and say, okay, look, I'm gonna take over the property, I'm gonna own it, and I'll pay that mortgage moving forward. It's that simple. So that's the typical way. Now, I have bought property where the home was close to retail
Hmm.
at the time. This was 3 years ago. That the property is close to retail, and we buy it sub two, and they're not behind on their mortgage, right? So why did they do that? It was close to retail. They didn't want to go through the process of selling their home with a realtor, and they knew they might have to bring a little bit money to closing. They didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
So we step in, take ownership of the property, pay that mortgage moving forward, and they went on to another state. That's what they want to do. They want to stop taking care of the property and move out of state.
You just explained really two really similar but different situations of why a seller would would agree. Again, number one, they know, like, and trust you. Obviously, you're doing what you say you're going to do, but you're solving a specific problem. I mean, you're helping people out of pre-foreclosure. In some cases, you're likely helping them with a potential credit fiasco as well if they were to go through that, and then not having to. I think writing a check at the closing table to sell your house is just bananas, and most people don't understand that there's another way to do it. Michael just explained how to do that.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. And, everybody has equity right now. So it's really hard for people to wrap their mind around. But I'm telling you, there's a time and a place for it. And we're going to be coming back to it soon. And that just happened to be a time that worked for that person. So,
I agree about coming back to it soon. We could probably talk the rest of the time about that, but we're not. So, just investing since 2014. Now let's go back
yep.
because you were doing something before that. So let's hear the story. What were you doing prior to real estate, and then let's kind of dive into why you decided to get into real estate.
Yeah. Well, that could be a longer story. So, um, my wife and I moved to Arizona right out of college,
Hmm.
and she started working, and I was working on my master's, and we had a family. We had my brother had passed away, so we decided, like, Arizona wasn't it, and we were coming back. And I think I was trying to get to grips with a lot of different things in my life, and realizing that we also had this ton of student loan debt that you don't really think about while you're in college, right? So, um,
Hmm.
I started getting into personal finance really at that time. And then I went right into my W 2 job as well. So I'm working W 2, and we're trying to pay off debt, and, student loan debt, personal, like, not consumer debt, basically, right?
Yeah.
That we had gotten into going out there that didn't work out for, personal reasons, but hey, it happens. And I started looking into ways of, like, okay, there's got to be a better way. And I was so basically right out of college, all ready to go, get in to my W 2. I was already kind of disillusioned of what a W 2 meant to me. I wasn't, like, I suddenly had this realization that it wasn't what I thought it would be. And that's when I really started down the path of, like I said, I started with personal finance and got to understand that really well. And then I found real estate.
Hmm.
Um, so it wasn't long after graduating. I mean, it was still pretty long. I mean, I spent 8 years in W 2, you know, kind of going through it before I decided to do something as well as my W 2. And actually, the first thing I did was I had vending machines. So I had a few vending machines at a couple locations. And I'm like, okay, like, that's got starting to wrap my mind around passive income,
Yep.
right? That those machines were making me money when I wasn't there. And I didn't have to go there that often, which is probably sad because I picked the worst locations, right? I went to anybody that would take me, and delivered vending machines to a company with 13 people. I was like, how much vending machines, like, could they actually buy at the
Yeah.
time, But that was my foray to into entrepreneurship. And I was like, okay, I'm making a little something. I'm starting to learn business. And, that was in 12 and 13, going
Hmm.
into 14 when I got my real estate license. So I can go into that too, like, at the point that I got my real estate license.
Yeah, I'm interested. I mean, the vending machine thing cracks me up, but again, it's a great way to earn passive income. I mean, there's people making a lot of money with vending machines. I'm sure you can, talk about that, or know people who are doing that. But you
And I
said
didn't
that,
lose money on them. I didn't
yeah.
lose money on vending machines.
And
Like,
again,
yeah, I made money. And when I sold the business, like, sold my few locations,
hmm,
I made money on that too. So I didn't lose money in vending machines.
yeah. And you didn't have to be there. Like, you didn't have to work for dollars, which is what you were doing your W-2, which is, you said something that really resonated with me, was the W-2 wasn't what I expected it to be. So what did you expect it to be, and then what did it end up being?
Well, I think it really wasn't what I expected to be because of debt,
Hmm.
student loan debt, especially, like, it just ate everything that we had. and here we are with, her and I with both degrees making good money,
Mhm.
both in the medical field, and we didn't really have that much excess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what got my mind like, okay, what do we got to do to not allow that to happen anymore? Like, how do we get out of that cycle? And that's why I said like personal finance is where it started, paying down debt. And that was just too slow for me.
Yeah. Okay. So you had a mindset shift in terms of like, I would assume that you just never saw a way out of the mountain of debt that you had with student loans and personal debt staying in your W 2.
Not
Or,
fast enough, at least. I mean,
okay.
there's obviously a calculation to it, right? But life happens also in between that. Um, so that calculation's, it's not always perfect. So I saw that. I'm like, okay. And by that time I started to think about real estate, of what that meant, um, what kind of passive income that could provide. I'm like, all right, like, and I got into real estate. I had never read like Rich Dad Poor Dad, anything like that. Like I just hopped in and was like, okay, like let's just go try it, right?
Yep.
So that's first thing I did was got my license in 2014. That's what I did. Now I knew that investing is what I wanted to do, but I was like, all right, like I know a couple of realtors, they're awesome.
Mhm.
I'll join their brokerage and just learn the ropes. But they allowed me to manage property right off the bat. So in my first year, I was managing rental property. And
Nice.
that really taught me how to do what I do. Like getting into the thick of managing property for other
Mhm.
people was a way that was like, okay, I can do this. And I found that I had a knack for finding good tenants.
Hmm.
So that was kind of my first foray into it. Is like, okay, if I can find good tenants and they stick around, they don't damage the property, this is easy. Little
Right.
did I know, right? Like this is easy. But I had good properties to manage at the time. It wasn't like I had, um, the worst properties, but
Yeah.
I was able to tackle it, and I grew that slowly, and they didn't take any commission from it. So my brokers didn't care. They're like, we don't, we'll help you collect the rent. They were so awesome. Like
Yeah.
literally, these two, the primary brokers there, one of them has been my board president of our
Mhm.
Central Indiana brokerage, of all of realtors. She was the president. So I had great learning experiences from them. Honestly, though, and I've said this before, they, having said that, they didn't really know investing, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic realtors had a concept of what investing is, but not in the way that I've come to know it now. You know,
Right. Most people don't know it the way you know it now. So, were
well,
you
there you
doing
go.
this? Were you doing this alongside the W 2?
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, that's
No, no,
back
that's
to the,
okay.
yeah. Yeah, I was. So I was an athletic trainer. Okay. So I was in sports medicine. So I wouldn't go to the school until 1:30, 2 o'clock. And by that time, like for the first few years of doing that, I had kids. So it was great. I got to stay home with the kids. They would go to daycare for a short time and my wife would pick them up.
Hmm.
It was great. It worked out perfect. Um, you know, so as I started getting into real estate, my kids started going to school full time. It's like now I was twiddling my thumbs during the mornings. And there's only so many dishes you can wash before you're like, all right, like we got to do something else. And that was part of it too, is
Yeah.
kind of using my time in a way that could make us money. So that's when I was like, okay, yeah. So from 14 to 16, I was doing my W-2 job and investing.
Now,
Well, investing's loosely at that point. Like I finally bought my first property in 15, but I was
okay.
managing property and doing all the things that investors do.
So the this is great. I mean, you're doing both. It sounded like you. I mean, you could have done a lot with that free time. I mean, you could have went on a Netflix marathon, but
Right.
you decided to do something with that time because again, you had this strong reason of this of tackling the debt and getting to a certain
Yep.
place in your life that you wanted to be in, which I'm assuming is freedom.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was the goal of it, at least. I mean, at least to get some debt freedom from commercial,
Mhm.
consumer loan debt, student loan debt. That was the plan. And, and I honestly wasn't very good at it because what I found is I would hoard all of the real estate income to then buy real estate. Right. So it
Mhm.
didn't have the effect that I thought because I was kind of obsessed with trying to hold it and use it towards real estate. Right.
Yep.
And I told you this before, but I'll tell you again, like, I think I left my W-2 job a little too early. I left it after 2 years. I was in 2 years of real estate, uh, part-time, working in the mornings, some in the evenings, definitely on the weekends.
Mhm.
When I wasn't at the athletic training job, I was doing real estate. And, you know, and I kept trying to roll that into something else and probably didn't utilize the capital the way I should have and actually got out of consumer debt faster.
So is that why is when you say you left the job too soon, is that the reason that you didn't quite get to where you wanted to go?
Part
And
of it, I think that a couple of things there. I never, one of the things I wish I would have utilized probably sooner was my W-2 income from from an investor's perspective, especially at the time, right? We're
yeah,
talking 2014, where we're still had low prices coming off the 2008 housing crash. Like we bought our house, my wife and I bought our house in late 2007, early 2008. So got a
mhm,
good deal,
mhm,
and looking at the houses that we had an opportunity to buy and really leverage our W-2 income, we never really did that. Now, it was before I found creative too, right?
yeah,
So, if I knowing then what I know now, like it'd be a different ball game altogether. I mean, I would be cleaning up like with these houses.
yeah.
But I wish I would have leveraged that W-2 early, um, with her and bought more real estate early on.
Got it. So keeping the W two to get bank debt so you could buy these properties, right? Yep.
Yep.
No, that makes total sense. You lose that W two. You just don't look good on paper, unfortunately.
No, you don't. It's something we still fight, and I've been working for myself since 2016.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, I'll tell you real quick how that. So I went to my wife, I think in December. So the school year, that's really the summers. We have a lot of flexibility as athletic trainers.
Hmm.
So in December, I was like, my property management company was starting to hop. I was up to almost 50 properties under management, just by myself. Right. So I'm doing that plus my full-time job, managing 50 units and having my full-time job.
Yeah.
So it was going well. I was like, I really think I can turn this into something and get rid of my W-2.
Hmm.
And I went to her and I was like, hey, here's what I think. And she was, she's been nothing but supportive. Like, she was like, okay, that's what you like. You think we can do it? Like, go do it. So come that summer, I took advantage of the job and really waited to the last minute. Like I didn't quit my W-2 job till the start of the school year
Yeah.
of that 2016 year, and went full time into real estate.
That's awesome. Was there any fear around that decision? It sounded like you were pretty definitive, but I mean, did you have any hesitation? Did you ever doubt yourself? I mean, talk about that if you could.
Yeah. I don't know if I have moments in my life where I'm a ready, fire, aim person.
Hmm.
Um, although that's not generally what I do. Is if suddenly I feel strongly about something, I'll just do it, come right or wrong. Like I'm okay with failing at it, I guess, is what I felt like. I could always go get another athletic training job. This is kind of I felt, you know,
Yeah.
and that's just what was my mindset. Like I could always get another job. I could always get another job. If they need athletic trainers, I could go do it. But I think it did put pressure on us though, for sure. Like
Hmm.
I think I was a little disillusioned like that. Like when I went full time and those paychecks stopped, I did have pressure to really start to perform. And honestly, when you look at it, it sounds good having 50 properties under management, but it's really not that much, especially as a property manager. Um, so that's when I really started to do other things as well. I opened my own brokerage in real estate and started managing more properties. And I started hunting off market real estate. So I
Nice.
honestly, now having said that, I started in 2015 hunting off market real estate, but then I really started to focus on it then.
On it then. Okay. So the other thing too that you mentioned was you had the support of your wife, which is awesome. Did you
Mm-hmm.
always, again, not to get personal here, but
It's all good.
did you always know that? Did you always know it? Because I think a lot of I'm just gonna we're two guys here talking, so I think a lot of the times a lot of us men assume that maybe we won't have the support of our wives and we won't
Yeah.
ever broach that discussion, right? That this is something I want to do. Um, so, I mean, did you always have her support, or did you ever have those feelings about whether or not she would accept your dream?
Yeah. A little bit. I mean, maybe a little bit both ways. I always knew she would support. I knew that part,
Yeah.
right? But I also didn't think about how she would react when it got hard, right? Like
Mhm.
if as we get to the point that it gets tough of how that person would react. And look, we didn't have easy days at times when I'm not like, if I'm trying to create something and grow something and putting the money back in, I still wasn't good at bringing it home, and that was the challenge. Like I was always thinking about how do we grow it? How do we put it back in? And I don't, I don't really need that much. And my family doesn't really ask for much, but still I have a family to support as
Right.
well. She had a good income, but we really needed both of our income.
Mm.
And, I was trying to grow at the same time. So we did have some rough times, but she never said, "Hey, you should go get a job," ever. Not once. She has never said that at any point in anything that we've done. So, I would say that I feel lucky to have her and the support that she's given me for sure. And I know that that may not be the case everywhere. But having said that, it hasn't been easy every step of the way.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, great that you have the support of your wife. I mean, that was huge for me because I did a lot of projecting onto that
Right.
situation before I even said, "Hey, I want to do this real estate thing," and it's not a thing; it's a business, right? But that was and once I've been in sales for, as you know, for a long time prior to doing this, and I always say this is my best sales pitch ever, was when I had my wife in the office and I had the whiteboard of how we were going to live and pay for everything, and and she was down for sure. So you need that support, definitely. And then you mentioned that it wasn't always easy, so you leave the job, you're doing this full time now. I'm sure there's a sense of relief there. Feel free to talk about that, but it's not like it got any easier for you. You still had to you were building something else.
Yeah. And at the same time, part of my W-2 job was working at night. I mean, from 1 to 10 p.m. for events, high school
Mm.
basketball games, football games, Friday night, Saturday morning, back at the field doing. I had a thought, now I'll be able to control my hours working in real estate. I'll be able to control my what I'm doing,
Yeah,
and that is a misnomer as well. If you think you're going to hop into entrepreneurship and then suddenly you have free time, yet another thing coming to you, right? So, that was another part. And I completely forgot your question there, but I was just thinking like, that was another challenge that we had kind of moving into the entrepreneur space.
yeah. No, you answered it. It was just like that. What was it? What was it any different? It sounds like it was a little bit
Yeah,
more challenging because you're building something.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
You think it's going to be one way. You hope it's going to be one way, but you don't know, as the old adage, like you don't know what you don't know. And I had to learn it the hard way.
that's right. And that's learning, right? Learning is
Right.
learning. So, all right, let me ask you a couple questions about, the things that you do to, because being a business owner, changing careers, even forget about being a business owner. If you're just changing careers, there's a lot of mindset stuff that revolves around that, because I think a lot of folks feel like stuck in their position. Like for instance,
Yeah.
maybe you felt stuck. Like I felt stuck in my job for a long time because I created this lifestyle
Right.
associated with my job. And I said, well, if I ever leave this job, I'm never going to make enough money. No one's going to pay me this much money. And I just stayed in it. I stayed on a treadmill for years and years and years because I had created this lifestyle and mismanaged it, right?
Right.
So where I'm going with this is, what is the mindset for you around dealing with some of these challenges? Maybe you have a bad month, like you said, or you had some struggles. I mean, how do you handle that? Because I think a lot of people might just go back and say, "Well, I'm just going to go back and be an athletic trainer."
Yeah. Yeah. I think subconsciously it was never an option for me to go back. I don't know what that is about me, but it was never an option. And here's why. Because my wife was not very happy about this actually. We got, you have to have credits that you do yearly, 2 to 3 times a year. You have to give for your license.
Yep.
I did nothing, and I let my license lapse. And getting your license back in athletic trainer is like extremely hard. So I didn't see that ever as an option. Probably, once again, a little blindly. But my mindset was that that's not what I'm going to do anymore. I had, I really started to change my mindset as an entrepreneur in that 15 and 16 year. Like when I went real estate, when I got my license, going all the way back to my license, I knew something had to change. That's what I knew. And I know that what I was doing wasn't it. It wasn't working. So I had to try something different. And as I got a taste of it, I knew I couldn't go back because there is a little bit of freedom in it, even though it's tough. So that freedom felt good. And I thought, okay, I can do this. Why would I? Now, my business has taken iterations since then. And I've really tried to adapt it to be more home friendly, which lease options are a great way to talk about, being home friendly because you can do less of them. Right. And that's how I've changed the business to try to be more home friendly. But that mentality for me was just, I don't know if it was anything that I did or anything I read, maybe a little bit in what I read and what I listened to, but I knew from the get-go, I just couldn't go back.
Right.
Right or wrong. Even though I said, I know I could go back, it was really nothing I ever really considered.
Right. And you burn the ships. Your version of burning the
I
ships.
did.
You let the athletic
I
license
let the
lapse.
license, yes.
Yeah. So
right or wrong. And maybe even subconsciously, like, I'm not going to do it. And now it's permanent.
Yeah. You mentioned two things that I want you to expand. I'd like you to expand on. Eventually you found some freedom. So maybe give a couple examples of what being an entrepreneur can provide. If you stick with it and and don't go back and get your athletic license renewed.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and then mentioned something about home life. Are you referring to working from home and being with your
Yeah.
family more? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
definitely talk about that because I think a lot of us want that.
Yeah. Well, as far as like what real estate has provided me and allowed me to do, even then, like when you're looking at when I went full time in 16, all the really into the first part of COVID, which is late 19, early 20, right? It was still pretty tough. I'd sold my property management company in 18. I was getting pulled like from both sides as the investors and the tenants pulling me in both sides. And I also found creative real estate in 18. I did my first subject to deal then. And that really changed how I think about real estate. I'm like, wait a second. I can buy a property and leave the mortgage on it and be able to get to a lot of, future equity. I was hooked after that. I'm like, okay, how do I find more of those? And that's when it really changed for me. Now, it was still tough, like I said, all the way up through 19, but we started to get traction. And I started to buy more and more subject to properties. And between 18 and 20, I bought 10 subject to properties, and was like, okay. We did a couple of flips on them. I made my first, really large amount of money. And I was like, okay, you know, having chunks is what I like. Even if it, and I still wasn't even into the cash flow yet, right?
Yeah.
I like the large chunk. And then we come home and pay off a lot of stuff. I'm like, that's the case. That's what I want to do. And I really started to manage my time more as well. I was working from home. I got to see the kids come home, and that was great. And knowing that I could still make large chunks of money and be at home, I was like, all right, do I really, how big do I want my company to be? That's when I started to think about what my view, because really from then, from 14 all the way up to 19, I was just learning and grinding.
Hmm.
I didn't really have a goal. It was like, okay, I want to make money. That I knew. I know I could create something. I did that, but I didn't have a true goal. And I think that's what made me sell my property management company as well,
Yeah.
is really having a clarity of where I want to be and how I want my life to look. Because I was on this trajectory of entrepreneurial or die. And I was like, okay, that might be true and that might be good, but I can tame that into the life that I want to create.
Right. And what is that? What is the life that you want to create? Have you created it? Are you living it now? Are you
A little
still
bit,
getting
yeah.
there? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm still getting there. Like but I like being here at the house,
Mm.
and I can still go out and look at real estate, but I've created a team to do that. I don't have to go look at real estate anymore. We can go jump in the pool with the kids at 5 o'clock. I can be done and, still have the benefits of being an entrepreneur. Um, it might slow me down in my growth a little bit, but I kind of like the style that I've created. And I'm also creating it. It can still grow maybe a little slower, but it can
Yeah.
still grow while I'm working from the time I get to drop off the kids at school, right? And I'm here when they hop off the bus. I work for an hour when they get home and then I'm done. Most
Beautiful.
nights, there's still things like we're not perfect. There's still emergencies or hey, I'm hot on this lead, but
Yeah. But you get to make that decision. You don't have to go,
yep,
you don't have to pick the phone up and be like, hey, hey boss, I gotta, can I do this? Can I go pick my kid up?
yep,
That's one of the beautiful things about being a business owner is that, yeah, I remember the first time I went on vacation, I didn't have to put in a time request. I mean, I got them
yeah,
anyways, but it was just cool not to have to ask, right? Like we're going to go do this. And
yep,
I don't have to ask anybody. So there's something very empowering about that. Even if maybe you're not lighting it up right away, it's just kind of cool to be able to make those decisions on your terms, right?
yeah, yeah. You don't have to go during spring break or whatever it is.
Yeah,
You don't have. You can choose the time and place.
totally.
It's
And
funny.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, no, you please.
Well, I was just thinking about vacation and how rough my actually first couple of vacations were as an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
owning a property management company, because I hadn't set a way that I could step away from it. So I actually struggled, on my first few vacations.
Yeah.
And my wife could tell you, like, I took my laptop, I was sitting there on the computer at times, I was on the phone, and I still probably answer my phone too much now, but I just like to, mostly it's with other investors chatting up about real estate. But yeah, it
Right.
was tough the first few vacations. It took me a while to actually relax on a vacation.
But that ultimately led you to build the system
Yeah,
so that you could step away now. And it's just something you got to learn, right? Um, which is why you've created the lifestyle you've created now. You can hang with the kids, go in the pools because you got other people doing that. And that's what building the business is about. So don't, I think the lesson that you're trying to give here is don't, you're a W-2 employee. Don't become one in your business.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
You got to be the owner.
yep, you got to be an owner. And I found that I also don't like being the top dog all the time. Like I got to have partners in it as well. So I brought in people that do things that I don't, and that I'm happy with splitting the money with,
Yeah.
so that I don't have to do it. It doesn't always have to be me managing all the people that can do it. I can bring on real professionals that want an ownership piece in it, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, well, why wouldn't you be? I mean, you don't have to have it all. A part of a deal is better than none of it, right?
Yeah, I can
Okay.
manage my half, and I'm happy with that.
I just want to go back to sub two for a little bit because again, I still don't think everyone's going to understand this. I mean, if you said you did 10 in 2 years, is that right? You got 10
Yep.
in 2 years. It sounds like you've flipped a couple of them or a handful of them,
Yep.
which is an exit strategy. But for the listeners to understand, if you pick up 10 of these in a couple of years, I mean, this is you own these houses, right? This is like
Yep.
lifetime cash flow on a monthly basis, and depending on what your exit strategy is, like you own the house and someone else is in there if you're renting it or doing a lease option or Airbnb. I don't know what all your strategies are. I mean, you're getting that cash flow month over month, and your management of said property is likely very limited.
Yeah. Um, yeah, for sure. I mean, so I mean that was a different. I kind of break down my journey here in
Mm-hmm.
the three separate categories: the early, in the middle, and then now where I'm at today. So that's kind of the middle section, and I I still didn't do it perfect. I think there's one thing that you can learn from me is that I've taken imperfect action all along the way, um, but I took action. That's one of the things that I've always done is just imperfect action. And I had a partner then with the first 10 sub twos. I found all the deals. I contracted all the deals. I determined, their values and kind of, we probably shouldn't have exited a few of them. Like if I'm looking back, even then, the properties that we flipped, if we would just kept, would be, just be astronomical, kind of what we would have made comparatively.
Yeah.
And so that also changed my mindset of what I want to do with them. And a lease option is kind of a hybrid of that.
Mm-hmm.
But buying those properties sub two, I ended up having to partner with those. And when we decided to separate, I gave him all the properties and took a cash buyout.
Got it.
So wasn't great in the end. Like we made good money and I made good money and I got to walk away with good money. But ultimately I didn't control those properties again. And that's okay. That wasn't going to happen again to me. And that's where I've kind of lined up where I am today is, I'm going to partner with the right people. We're going to be slow. I'm going to control all the real estate that I buy. That's the one thing I won't do, is, I'm going to be the controlling factor of it, or at least have an understanding of what the exit will be with whoever I partner with.
I,
So, yeah,
I love it. I also wrote down what you said, which I think is a incredible quote for this show: "Imperfect action all along the way, but you took action." Right? Like it doesn't. I think a lot of us, and I was like this for decades, thinking that I just needed to know it all and be perfect in whatever I was attempting to do. And you don't. Like, you and me are not really much different than the folks who are listening who
for
want to get
sure.
out of who want to get out of their job, except that we decided, we committed, and we just do something every day. Like we take some type of action on a daily basis. Do you think that's a fair statement?
Yeah. And I sometimes fail at that. like like that, I fail at that too, and whatever, like that's part of the deal.
Yeah.
I'm not going to feel as motivated as I want to be every single day, and that's probably part of the problem working from home. But you know uh,
Yeah.
if I ever feel that way, I go do something physical, whether that's workout or I get into cleaning the house. Like I got to do something to get
Right.
my mind, try to like get my lifestyle back in balance for whatever it is. And usually it's temporary and we're back at it the next day.
Yeah.
But it's okay to, I've set that up that I can have a bad day.
That's great that you recognize that and you have, you acknowledge it, and then you have a system to deal with it, and it's
Right.
okay. It's okay that we're not, lighting it up every single day.
Right.
It's we don't have to. We get even business owners get burned out. You gotta watch that. You know, I see a bunch of books on your shelf there, so I'm
Oh
gonna
yeah.
I'm gonna ask you maybe what's one of your go-to that you would give someone, that maybe was looking to get into real estate, or you maybe, what's your favorite?
I'm going to look it up real quick because I really want to. So,
Yeah, yeah, do it.
I didn't read, Robert, like I said, I've said this before, but I didn't read Robert Kiyosaki's, uh,
Rich Dad, Poor
Rich
Dad.
Dad, Poor Dad. I
Yeah,
didn't at first. Um, I did later on, but that's not, uh, that's not the one that really got me excited. I actually read one of his ebooks, and
Mm-hmm.
it changed the way I looked at money. And honestly, I can't remember the name of it right now. Um,
Oh, now I'm intrigued.
I know,
I
right?
put you on the spot, and I don't
I
remember
gotta
them
look it
having an
up.
ebook.
You can cut all this me looking it up out, but
No, this is
um,
gonna stay in.
yeah, I'll have to find it, and you can put it on the list later. But it talked about what money is
Hmm.
and where it comes from. We really talked about the process of creating, and that changed the way I looked at money. As a tool rather than something I needed to collect. And that's the one that I really liked. I do a lot of, um, I did a lot of podcasts early on. We have books. Um, up here, I've got Clint Coon's Asset Protection,
Mm.
which got me thinking about trust
Yep.
and, being anonymous on our properties that we own. I got this book here with Adam Gant that I've started called Think Again, and
I've
that's
got
been
that.
good. So you do, yeah.
I haven't read it, but I have it.
Yeah,
It's
it's
on.
not the easiest read. He is a psychologist for
Yeah.
Wharton, so it's not it's not the easiest read, but great thoughts in there about getting trapped into how we think and be able to come out of those thought patterns. Um, but yeah, when I get that, I'll email it to you, and you can add this to the list and put it on
Everybody is
the
going to be
bottom.
listening to this, waiting for bated breath. So go with
They can
bated. So
look
go
right in
to
the
the
comments
Yeah,
right
just go
now.
to the show notes and they'll be in there. So,
Yep.
yeah, no, that's awesome. All right. So the last thing I'm going to ask you before we start to wrap up here is, do you do anything, and it's okay if you don't, do you do anything on a daily basis that maybe, whether it's a routine or some type of ritual that maybe sets you up, puts you in the right frame of mind to win the day?
Yeah, I would say I really take my time in the mornings.
Hmm.
You know, that I do have a routine of taking the kids to school. I'm losing part of my hair, so I go in the shower and I shave my head, shave my face, and I kind of take my time in the mornings so that I feel good before I come up to the office and get started. So that's um, and probably maybe lose a couple hours in the morning, but I like the process of it. I don't take the kids to school till 9 a.m. and I come
Yep.
home and get some breakfast and take a minute for myself, and then I'm ready to tackle the day.
So self care is super important. Had you done that when you were working at the W-2? Did you spend a lot of
Uh,
time on that?
no, not
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. I mean, the W-2 was the routine,
Right. Right.
you
Oh,
know.
that's so great. You're dropping some good bombs on
Yeah,
this on the here.
right.
W-2 was the routine. It's also the risk, in my opinion. But
Yeah,
and most people don't realize that because you're expendable, right?
right.
At any given moment. I mean, I worked for the same company for 17 years, and I survived 3 rounds of layoffs. And every time I said, "This is it, this is it," But they don't. When they start laying off salespeople, like the company's going out of business. So, but
Right.
I made it through all of them. But that was when I started to realize, like, man, I easily could have been that person that got laid off.
It was a roll of the dice every time, right?
It
Potentially.
was, and it just made me even more. That kind of drove me even further. Like, hey, if this happens, I'm out. I'm out of luck. So I gotta figure something else out. And it took a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I ultimately got there. But that's a great quote. So, Michael, I really appreciate you being on. Before we wrap up, I just, if there's any contact information you want to leave, website, whatever, and then, any parting thoughts that you have, any advice to the listeners that you haven't had an opportunity to give yet.
Yeah, I don't really find myself as the gem dropper, but I don't, as far as the advice is just like I said, I really do believe in imperfect action. So I'd say start there, take action, fail a little bit, be okay to, it's okay to fail a bunch of times because that has definitely happened to me. And if people would reach out to me, probably the easiest way is my Instagram. It's ML Thompson II.
Nice.
That's it.
We
ML
will leave
Thompson II.
ML Thompson II. We will leave that. What's the II?
It's the second. I was
The
born
second.
second.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the second. Michael Thompson the second. All right.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll definitely leave that in there. And then yeah, let's, take action. You don't have to chop the whole tree down day one, folks. You can just do a little bit at a time, but you got to get started, and it's okay as long as you don't, I remember I read a quote somewhere. I was listening, I think it was on a podcast where the guy said, you can't fail if you don't quit.
Yeah. Yeah.
You only fail if you quit. So, it's okay to make mistakes, and you're going to, and that's how you learn.
Yeah. I agree.
All
Awesome.
right, buddy. Appreciate you being on, and you dropped a ton of value here. I love all your quotes, and it was great to be with you. Everyone, make it a great day.